Alright guys, so switched char after I've cut it. It's starting to grow pretty quickly now, seems like. Looking pretty good. Strawberries. And another one here, I need to do that too there. And one plant died under there. That sucked. There's one. Let's see here. See nothing else. Got all kinds of flowers on this stuff here. I'm hoping that they'll make seed. I don't know what the seed looks like as far as what happens. I'm assuming the seed is within the pot, within the same pod there. If you know what assuming does, look at the stuff there today, buddy. Looking good, ain't it? The arugula. Here, I'll shake this up there a little bit just in case that's how that, oops, that works. We'll shake this one here in case that's how that works. So, still don't see any spinach coming up yet. No spinach yet. Didn't see no Swiss chard back there either. So we'll see, no peas right there. This thing here's looking really good. This big old giant beet here. And I'm hoping that it's a giant. I hope. No telling how big it is. So all you can do is hope that it's huge. That hole was fell with the potatoes. That's crazy. All them potatoes down in that hole must have got heavy and pulled it down. Look there. See, that was I took the auger and augered that out, and then put potatoes in the top layer of it there, and didn't mash the hole back in very much. Whenever I made that, I just put dirt in there a little bit, a whole thing of. I filled the hole up with black cow is what I done. And then I planted the potato in the top. So what it's looked like is everything's trying to settle. Maybe the potatoes got a little heavy and started pulling it down. I don't know. This one here's done the same way. It might end up pulling it down as well. Got plenty of stuff here going. Let's shake this right here, like so. Cabbage, man. That cabbage y'all wouldn't believe, man. Look how big that cabbage is getting. Starting to form a little head here and everything. I like it. That's cool. Hopefully it gets real big. I hope. I'm gonna grow me some big old cabbage heads hopefully this year. Let's shake this one here up a bit. Like so. There we go, just in case. I don't know again how it pollinates. I ain't got a clue, but if shaking helps, let's shake it. No Brussels sprouts through here yet. That's kind of sad. I'm hoping to get some Brussels sprouts going soon, but hey, we'll get them soon enough, I guess. So, look at that with these cabbages are. I mean, that one over there is like 4 foot tall. I ain't kidding you. Let me see here. In fact, I'll stand it up to me, and that comes up to my chin. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's big. It's a big old cabbage. That one over there is even taller. If you were to straighten it out and stand it up, right? Look at that. If that kink wasn't there, if that curve wasn't right there in this, see that curve? If you were to stand that straight up and get that curve out of there, because right now, as it stands, this is up to. That's my Lord have mercy. That's my eyes. So that thing's over my head. So, yep. That cabbage is looking all right, and that one is too. That one there don't look so hot. That one over there is looking all right. I believe that one right there must be the only late flat Dutch that's growing. The rest of them must all be golden acre cabbage. So anyhow, it all looks fairly decent in here. So we'll get out of here and on to the next. don't know how much of that y'all heard. Somebody is over in the church parking lot cutting donuts. I know it. I know that's where they're at, cutting donuts. Pitiful. Pitiful.
Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. So today we want to talk a little bit about nitrogen and the importance of nitrogen, and probably a little bit on phosphorus, since we might have some time. We'll just see how long this video goes in for nitrogen. If I finish up quick enough, we'll go into phosphorus. So most of us know about NPK. NPK is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. All right, and I don't think a lot of us have an understanding of the nutrients and what they are for our plants. Kind of want to go through the stages of growth and why each stage is, the nitrogen is important to that stage, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is talk about that, and the reasoning being that nitrogen is important. All right, so we're going to be reading from Clemson Education. It's www.clemson.edu is the first part that we're going to be reading from. The importance of nitrogen, because let me see here. They're going to talk about a fruit tree. We're later going to talk about giant pumpkins, but for the time being, the importance of nitrogen is what this says, because a fruit tree is a sessile organism, S-E-S-S-I-L-E organism. It cannot move. It depends upon its owner to properly feed it. Same being as all plants, right? All plants, they don't move outside of their growth. They don't move, so you're going to have to feed it, all right? Nitrogen is an essential nutrient for the production of amino acids, proteins, nucleic acids, etc. And then it goes on to say, in stone fruit trees require an adequate annual amount supply for proper growth and productivity, which I can tell you right now, my peach tree takes a huge amount. And whenever I started giving it, I noticed that the base of the peach tree finally started to swell and do something, right? And it's starting to grow the way it should have been once I started giving proper nitrogen amounts to it last year. So in case you're a stone fruit grower, well, I guess we're going to have one of them days today, ain't we? If you're a stone fruit grower, then use your nitrogen in that manner. Let's see. Another goal should be to maintain a healthy leaf canopy, as well as harvest, so nitrogen in the leaves can be remobilized back into the tree before defoliage for storage as reserves that later support bloom and initial canopy development the following spring. Basically, they're saying when the leaves drop, it gives you nitrogen. Same as when you cut the grass and you leave it lay, or you cut the grass and you pile it up and you mulch your beds with it, right? Same thing. Green mulch, right? Green mulch. Thinking green mulch, and that's nitrogen. These reserves are tapped before the root uptake of soil nitrogen begin. All right, so the right amount, insufficient nitrogen reserves from previous fall hinder spring canopy development. That's what you find whenever we're doing soil tests and analysis. We're finding out what our levels of nitrogen, potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are in the soil, and we're adjusting those accordingly in a soil calculator in order to find out the proper level of nitrogen specifically for giant pumpkins or your specific plant that you're wanting to grow. Generally, tomatoes do fairly well in giant pumpkin soil. Somebody might disagree with me, but I've seen several of them do really good. So, I mean, I don't see how you could disagree too much. Might not be the exact same, but it's fairly close enough, and the tomatoes love it. But if you're growing something different, maybe different requirements for different things, you have to play around with it. If you're doing garden stuff, like I said, we're going to get into the pumpkins here in a minute. If this persists during the growing season, leaf and shoot growth is stunted, and yield will be reduced. We see that a lot in growers that grow every year. Their plants get planted in the thing. They never do amend their soil properly. They don't do soil tests. They'll come out there and their plants will be deficient in something, right? And then they give a big blast of something to do the nitrogen or the phosphorus or the potassium, and the plant grows, just goes nuts, and then it dies back later because that initial surge of nitrogen that has been deficient gets into the system, but then it does not upkeep and take it for the long haul, right? If you want the long haul, you need to do a soil test in order to and have steadily amounts of nitrogen available to the plant for the plant uptake, and you need to continuously replace that nitrogen throughout the year. You can kind of let off the gas after you've pollinated, and then once that pumpkin is established, you can pick the gas back up again on your nitrogen, right? But you want to kind of push that envelope as much as you can. Even get I've even seen them get nitrogen bloat and burn on their leaves because they're pushing that envelope. They want that big plant as fast as possible, and they want to do really well. So they'll push it really hard, and then once they get to that point and they pollinate their pumpkin, to slack off the nitrogen just a little bit. Once that pumpkin is there, it's pollinated, it's established, they'll pick the nitrogen back up and go in overdrive. Now they might not pick it up to the extent that they had previously before the pollination, but they do pick the nitrogen back up and start using it quite heavily again in what we would consider, most people would consider heavy, right? But it's lower doses than what it had been getting. Let's see, premature defoliation may occur in the fall. Symptomatic leaves may appear chlorotic or yellowish, which is chlorosis, with a reddish coloration, while twigs will be stunted and appear spindly with red colored bark. Fruits may have a good red coloration but will typically be small and may have poor flavor. Excess nitrogen can result in shoot canopy that is much larger, denser than necessary. Okay, we see that a lot of times if you got nitrogen bloat, or nitrogen burn. Your plants get super green. They get super big. They're just kind of there. And I'm trying to think if I got anything here that's got any nitrogen bloat, and I do not have anything. You'll see it probably this summer. I'm sure I'll end up getting nitrogen bloat or burn this summer. But look up on some of these pages on Facebook or even on the internet, and you'll see what happens when you get oversaturated in nitrogen, and what the plant is taking it up, right, and you start getting these issues to occur. Leaves get really big, much bigger than they need to be. More denser foliage. You're getting more more leaves and secondaries and etc. than what you need to. So anyhow, too much foliage affects the penetration of sunlight, the humidity of the air within the canopy. We know that as pumpkin growers, we need good airflow. Okay, and if we're getting way too much, if we're just popping up new secondaries, tertiaries, we can't keep up with all of it. That happens when you got too much nitrogen. It just kind of, the plant goes nuts, right? It's got to put that nitrogen somewhere, so it puts it into growth, and it just starts throwing out everything. Now you'll notice though, a lot of times growers toward the end of the season, when their old plant is getting so old and it's dying, they'll start letting new stuff shoot up, right, to replace the old stuff. And that's a smart thing. It's a wise thing. I did it last year and it worked really well for me, because the back half of the plant was pretty gone on some of these plants and was non-existent. So I had to cut all the old stuff completely off so it didn't cause rot, and I let new stuff pop up because it was going to help with the photosynthesis. If you ain't got leaves, you ain't got photosynthesis. So remember that whenever you start talking about not letting stuff grow at all, because if your back half of your plant's dead, you got only the front half to depend on. You're really diminishing the power of that plant because you don't have any solar panels out there collecting sun, right? So anyhow, and it can cause problems with humidity. You got the fans blowing in through there. You're trying to keep the disease off of it because the wetness, the humidity within inside the plant, right? And if you can't keep it dried off, you'll start getting disease. Bacteria and fungi diseases, pests. love moisture, right? So they'll get up in there and just kill your plant. So you need to keep it good and dry as possible. You want to keep it good and spaced out evenly and good airflow throughout the plant so that you're not having any issues like that. Plus, if you get it too close to the fruit, have all that stuff up against it, you're liable to rot your fruit, okay? Ask me how I know. No matter how hard I tried to keep that stuff away from the fruit, I think that is one part that ended up getting me was they were still too close even though I had a fan going on it. Let me see here. Yeah, so it affects airflow in the canopy and the penetration of foliar applied pesticides. And I was going ahead and add that it also hurts your foliar feeding. Okay, so if you're foliar feeding, it hurts that. If you got too much leaves and foliage, hurts your pesticides. It hurts your fungicides and your other disease control stuff, right? So make sure you got good even space within all the leaves and stuff. No leaves laying on top of one another and crisscrossing and all that stuff. Make sure your secondaries are spaced out good. No tertiaries unless you need them, which there is a pattern that needs tertiaries. Negative consequences include negative consequences include increased disease pressure and reduction of size, coloration. Fruits that may be delayed in ripening. Inadequate sun penetration into the inner lower portions of the canopy may hamper flower bud initiation that could adversely affect next year's crop. You don't have to worry about that, I don't think, with giant pumpkins. Generally speaking, using too much nitrogen is a waste of money. Okay, so there's no use in wasting money. This hobby's already expensive enough. There's no use for us pumping a bunch of nitrogen into there that the plant doesn't need. Just doesn't need at all, right, to accomplish the goals that we're wanting. Spring application of a high rate of nitrogen may be very inefficient. This may be due in part to the fact that the tree demands nitrogen from the soil is actually low at times. This is actually low at this time because most nitrogen is being remobilized from reserves within the tree, so we don't have to worry about that. Heavy spring rains may leach out much of the nitrogen, so that's why we want to talk about the reason why we don't amend our soil in the fall or the winter time. We wait till closer toward planting time to amend the soil, but also giving time to let that stuff break down to where the plant can absorb it and it's able to be utilized by the plant. We want the plant to be able to uptake it, so you got to give enough time for it to break down to where the plant can uptake it, but you also got to be able to do it late enough to where it won't leach out before you get the plant in the ground. So there's a little bit of playing that you got to do there. The key to achieving improved nitrogen is use efficiency is applying smaller amounts of nitrogen several times during the growing season when active growth and absorption by roots is occurring. This can be accomplished by either broadcasting application of granular fertilizer to the ground or even more efficiently through low pressure micro irrigation systems where water soluble nitrogen forms are used with fertigation, right? The real question is when to make these applications. Ongoing research at Clemson University for the peach tree, that is, we got some talk about that. So that was that. Let's talk about the importance of nitrogen and the cycles of nitrogen real quick. So take what you can from that as far, I know they were talking about peaches, but take from that and learn from that because it will help you, okay? This is nitrogen cycle. Why is the nitrogen cycle so important? As the soil fertility page explains, nitrogen is really important for plant growth structure, plant food processing, metabolism, and the creation of chlorophyll. Without enough nitrogen in the plant cannot grow taller or produce enough food, usually yellow. But too much nitrogen is just as dangerous. It can result in the plant being burned so the leaves shrivel up, and an inability of plants to produce flowers. Okay, like we were talking about with our giants cucumbers back here, right? Too much nitrogen. I knew it wasn't it. I knew we had another problem. That's why I'm talking about. Go check that video out. anyways, you know, if you're getting way too many flowers, you end up not getting a female flower, and sometimes you cannot get any flowers, right? But anyhow, it's an inability of plants to produce flowers or grains. Nitrogen can also cause a lot of environmental damage in the groundwater and in oceans. This is why it's so important to understand the nitrogen cycle, even though it is very complex. Okay, talks about no soil, no life. All right, like not no soil, like N-O. It's, you know, the K-N-O-W, no soil, no life. All right, guys. Most of the nitrogen in the world is a gas. Plants cannot take nitrogen out of the air, so bacteria needs to do it for them. Some plants called legumes, soybeans, peanuts, peas, and clovers, we've talked about them extensively here, have a special relationship with the rhizobia bacteria, which you talk about. You hear people talk about the rhizosphere, right? These bacteria is attached to the root in little nodules, and when you cut these nodules open, it should be pink or red. This means that less fertilizer can be applied in the future crops, saving money and the environment. The nitrogen cycle is shown below. For an interactive version of the nitrogen cycle, check out Science Learn New Zealand. All right, and then it just shows, you know, a picture here of how everything works. Let's see if I can kind of show it to you right here. Y'all see that? So that's how everything works. All right. Pause it if you have to, so you can kind of look at it a little bit more. But we're going to get on. All right, guys. So giant pumpkin growing tips for the pumpkin man. All right. And this is on Giant Pumpkin Growing Tips webpage. Fertilizer time, it says here. This was written back in 2008. I'm sure there's some of this stuff that's, you know, kind of outdated, but this is what we're going to go with for right now. Actually, it's got a picture here from a 1325 grown in 2019. So must not be too awful bad, but it anyways, this article was written Saturday of May 31st, 2008. Fertilizer time. It says it's about time to give a little nitrogen boost to your pumpkin plant. By about now, your plant should be showing some signs of growth. In the next 4 weeks, it is really important to add vines and leaves. Let's see. So you salad means vines and leaves. So you can set a pumpkin about 12 feet out from the base. That means the stump, the base, the stump, the crown, right? When you put it into the ground, it grows out from there. That point then becomes your stump, your base, your crown, okay? So your stump, whatever you want to call it. So anyways, you want to set it 12 feet out roughly from there. June 28th through July 4th is the perfect time to pollinate and get a pumpkin growing. I would argue that. I would say, you know, before June 21st is really good. You know, somewhere around June 15th, June 21st, that's a perfect time to pollinate. Some people go all the way up to the, you know, end of June. I think the you know, about mid-June to three quarter way through June is better. Let's see. In order to get your pumpkin out to 12 feet, you probably have a lot of growing to do over the next few weeks. That is where the nitrogen comes in. Nitrogen will help your plants to grow just like it helps your grass grow. You don't want to give it too much, and you want to add it in the morning before the heat of the day and water it in well. I'm going to give my plant organic 1055 next Saturday. That's what he was talking about. 2 weeks later, I'm going to give it a small amount of organic 584 with mycorrhiza fungi to help bring on the flowers and support taproot. I will not give it any more fertilizer until 2 weeks after the fruit is set. Hopefully that will be around July 14th. At that time, I will give the plant a weekly or bi-weekly spray of Neptune's Fish and Seaweed 231 about once a month, and we'll replace the Neptunes with a very small amount of green sand 006 and 584 with my mycorrhizal fungi to give a little extra boost. You have to be very careful with fertilizers. The right amount will add pounds to your pumpkin. Too much will literally blow up your pumpkin. And nowadays, we've been giving it a lot more than this old boy. I can tell you that now. The right amount, will blow up your pumpkin. The wrong amount will literally blow up your pumpkin. Seeds can fly as far as 5 feet. Seeds can fly as far as 5 feet on a big blowout where the pumpkin has grown grown out of its own skin. Talks about pumpkin roots and all that stuff, and developing good roots and things. Did you know that the root system of a pumpkin are massive? In a one-of-a-kind research project in 1927, John Weaver and William Brunder, botanists at the University of Nebraska, grew many different vegetable crops and over time excavated and mapped the course of the root system. They published their own work in a book titled Root Development of Vegetable Crops, published by McGraw-Hill Company, New York. To my knowledge, no one since has attempted such a difficult task. Vines of small sugar pumpkins were about 16 feet long at maturity, and the top 12 inches of soil were filled with roots. The taproot of a mature pumpkin grew 6 feet deep and had around 10 or more lateral branches that extensively branched outwards for 5 to 17 feet or more. Many of these lateral roots were 2 to 4 feet long, and all the complexity and minute branches, minutely rebranched, forming a wonderfully efficient root complex. The second and third feet of the soil were also thoroughly filled with roots, with the fourth foot of soil containing many vertical descending roots, plant size of a pie pumpkin. Like small sugar, may not be as large and vigorous as a jack-o'-lantern type. It is probable that the root system of a larger pumpkin, such as Atlantic Giants, may be even more extensive than those reported in these books. So this can be found at nitrogen cycle processes. It's Knowledge Project, the Nature Education. Nitrogen cycle processes, players, and human impact. Nitrogen is one of the primary nutrients critical for the survival of all living organisms. Although nitrogen is very abundant in the atmosphere, it is largely inaccessible in the form to most organisms. The article explores how nitrogen becomes available to organisms and what changes in the nitrogen levels as a result of human activity means to local and global ecosystems. We're not going to talk about that. I'm sure some of you probably already know. Most of you know, too much nitrogen that leaks into the ground causes issues, right? Causes groundwater contamination. Introduction to nitrogen is one of the primary nutrients critical for the survival of living organisms and necessary component of many biomolecules, including proteins, DNA, and chlorophyll. Although nitrogen is very abundant in the atmosphere as dense nitrogen gas N2, it is largely inaccessible in this form to most organisms, making nitrogen a scarce resource and often limiting primary productivity in many ecosystems. Only when nitrogen is converted from the form dense nitrogen gas into ammonia, NH3, does it become available to primary producers such as plants. In addition to N2 and NH3, nitrogen exists in many different forms, including both inorganic, e.g. ammonia nitrate, and organic, e.g. amino and nucleic acids. forms. Thus, nitrogen undergoes many different transformations in the ecosystem, changing from one form to another as organisms use it for growth and, in some cases, energy. The major transformations of nitrogen are nitrogen fixation, nitrification, denitrification, anammox, and ammonification. I'm not scientific, guys, so sorry if I sound like a ding-dong. The transformation of nitrogen into its many oxidated states is key to the productivity in the biosphere and is highly dependent on the activities of a diverse assemblage of microorganisms such as bacteria, archaea, and fungi. Alright, so then it says, since the mid-1900s, humans have been exerting an ever-increasing impact on global nitrogen cycle. Human activities such as making fertilizer and burning fossil fuel. We ain't gonna talk about that. We ain't talking about that. Nitrogen fixation. Let's see here. Nitrogen gas, N2, makes up nearly 80% of the Earth's atmosphere, yet nitrogen is one of the nutrients that limits primary production in many ecosystems. Why is this so? Because plants and animals are not able to uptake nitrogen gas in that form. For nitrogen to be available to make proteins, DNA, and other biologically important compounds, it must first be converted into a different chemical form. This process of converting into biologically available nitrogen is called nitrogen fixation. N2 gas is a very stable compound due to the strength of the triple bond between the nitrogen atoms, and it requires a large amount of energy to break this bond. The whole process requires 8 electrons and at least 16 ATP molecules. As a result, only a select group of prokaryotes, I don't even know, prokaryotes, are available to carry out this energetically demanding process. Although most nitrogen fixation is carried out by the prokaryotes, some nitrogen can be fixed abiotically, ABIOTICALLY, by lightning and certain industrial processes, including the combustion of fossil fuels. Some nitrogen fixing organisms are free living, while others are symbolic nitrogen fixers, which require a close association with a host to carry out the process. Most of the symbiotic associations are very specific and have complex mechanisms that help maintain the symbiosis. Symbiosis, good Lord have mercy. It's really tiny. I need my glasses. I'm serious. Symbiosis. Most of the symbiotic associations are very specific and have complex mechanisms that help to maintain the symbiosis. For example, root exudates from legume plants, peas, clover, soybeans, etc., serve as a signal to certain species of the rhizome, which are nitrogen-fixing bacteria. This signal attracts the bacteria to the roots, and a very complex series of events then occurs to initiate uptake of the bacteria into the root and trigger the process of nitrogen fixation in the nodules that form on the roots. Some of these bacteria are aerobic, others are anaerobic, some are phototrophic, others are chemotrophic, i.e. they use chemicals as their energy source instead of a light. Although there is great physiological and phylogenetic diversity among the organisms that carry out nitrogen fixation, they all have a similar enzyme complex called nitrogenase Nitrogenase. I don't even know. Nitrogenase, I guess, I don't know. That catalyzes the reduction of N2 to NH3, ammonia, which can be used as a genetic marker to identify the potential for nitrogen fixation. One of the characteristics of nitrogenase is the enzyme complex is very sensitive to oxygen and is deactivated in its presence. The presence and this presents an interesting dilemma for aerobic nitrogen fixers, and particularly for aerobic nitrogen fixers that are also photosynthetic, since they actually produce oxygen. Over time, nitrogen fixers have evolved different ways to protect their nitrogenase from oxygen. For example, some cyanobacteria have structures called heterocysts that provide low oxygen environments for the enzyme that serves as the site where all the nitrogen fixation occurs in these organisms. Other photosynthetic nitrogen fixers fix nitrogen only at night when their photosystem are dominant and are not producing oxygen. Genes for nitrogenase are globally distributed and have been found in many aerobic habitats, oceans, lakes, soils, also in habitats that may be anaerobic or micro-aerophilic, termite guts, sediments, hypersaline lakes, microbial mats, planktonic crustaceans. The broad distribution of nitrogen fixing genes suggests that nitrogen fixing organisms display a very broad range of environmental conditions that as might be expected for a process that is critical to the survival on Earth. Nitrification is the process that converts ammonia to nitrate and then to nitrate, and is another important step. Nitrite to nitrate. Okay, so nitrification is a process that converts ammonia to nitrite, N-I-T-R-I-T-E, and then to nitrate, N-I-T-R-A-T-E, and is another important step in the global nitrogen cycle. Most nitrification occurs aerobically and is carried out exclusively by protokaryotes. There are two distinct steps of nitrification that are carried out by distinct types of microorganisms. The first step is oxidation of ammonia nitrate, which is carried out by microbes known as ammonia oxidizers. Aerobic ammonia oxidizers convert ammonia to nitrate via the intermediate hydroxylamine, a process that requires two different enzymes, ammonia monooxygenase and hydroxylane oxidorreductase. I don't even know. Ductase. Aeroductase. Oxidoreductase, I guess. I don't know. Oxidoreductase. There you go. Look it up for yourself. The process generates a very small amount of energy related to many other types of metabolisms. As a result, nitrosophers, I'm going to say nitrosophers, are notoriously very slow growers. Additionally, aerobic ammonia oxidizers are also autotrophs fixing carbon dioxide to produce organic carbon, much like photosynthetic organisms, but using ammonia as energy source instead of light. Unlike nitrogen fixation that is carried out by many different kinds of microbes, ammonia oxide is less broadly distributed amongst prokaryotes. Until recently, it was discovered that all ammonia oxide was carried out by only a few types of bacteria in the genre Nitrosomonas, Nitrosopira, and Nitrosocosis. I don't know. Sococcus, I guess. Nitrosococcus. However, in 2005, an archaean was discovered that could also oxidize ammonia. Since their discovery, ammonia oxidizing archaea have been found to outnumber the ammonia oxidizing bacteria in many habitats. In several years, ammonia oxidizing archaea have been found to be abundant in the oceans, soils, and salt marshes, suggesting an important role of nitrogen cycle for these newly discovered organisms. Currently, one of the ammonia oxidizing archaea has been grown in pure culture, Nitrosopomelius martimus. So our understanding of the physiological diversity is limited. Second step in nitrification is the oxidation of nitrate, NO2, to nitrate, NO3. This step is carried out by a completely separate group of prokaryotes known as nitrate oxidizing bacteria. Some of the genre involved in nitrate oxidation include Nitrospira, Nitrobacter, Nitrococcus, and Nitrospina. Similar to ammonia oxidizers, the energy generated from oxidation to nitrate to nitrate, the nitrate is a very small, and thus growth yields are very low. In fact, ammonia and nitrate oxidizers must oxidize many molecules of ammonia or nitrate in order to fix a single molecule of CO2 for complete nitrification. Both ammonia oxidation and nitrate oxidation must occur. Ammonia, blah, 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 blah. Ammonia oxidizers and nitrate oxidizers are ubiquitous in aerobic environments. They have been extensively studied in natural environments such as soils, estuaries, lakes, and open oceans environments. However, ammonia and nitrate oxidizers also play a very important role in wastewater treatment facilities. By removing potentially harmful levels of ammonia, it could lead to pollution of the receiving waters. Much research has focused on how to maintain stable populations of these important microbes in wastewater treatment plants. Additionally, ammonia and nitrate oxidizers help to maintain healthy aquaria by facilitating the removal of potentially toxic ammonia exerted in fish urine. Alright, so Ammoxin, yeah, ANAMMOX. Traditionally, all nitrification was thought to be carried out under aerobic conditions, but recently under a new type of ammonia oxidizing occurring under onyx conditions, ANOXIC conditions was discovered. Anamox anaerobic ammonia oxidation is carried out by prokaryotes belonging to the plantomycetes. Lord have mercy. Phlegm of bacteria. Let's see. The first described anamox bacteria was Brocadia anamoxidans. Anamox bacteria oxidizes ammonia by using nitrates as the electron acceptor to produce gaseous nitrate, nitrogen. Good Lord have mercy. Anammox bacteria were first discovered in annox bioreactors of wastewater treatment plants, but have since been found in a variety of aquatic systems, including low oxygen zones of the ocean, coastal and estuary sediments, mangroves, and freshwater lakes. In some areas, the ocean, the anammox process is considered to be responsible for a significant loss of nitrogen, denitrification. The process that converts nitrate to nitrogen gas, thus removing bioavailable nitrogen and returning it to the atmosphere. Denitrogen gas is the ultimate end product of denitrification. But other intermediate gases form nitrogen. Some of these gases, such as nitric oxide, are considered greenhouse gases. All right, guys. So this comes from the Illinois Giant Pumpkin Growers Association. Nitrogen is a major component of chlorophyll, the compound by which plants use the sun's energy to produce sugars from water and carbon dioxide, i.e. photosynthesis. Nitrogen also plays a role in the growth of tissues and cells found within the plant. It is also a major component of amino acids and the building blocks of proteins. Without proteins, plants wither and die. Nitrogen is very mobile. If N is lacking, it will move from older leaves into the younger leaves. This will show as yellowing of the old leaves first. If a soil test gives you a recommended amount of nitrogen to apply, it is usually divided into 3 separate applications across the growing season. Excessive nitrogen can give you bloat, lush plants that are more susceptible to sucking insects such as aphids, whiteflies, leaf hoppers, etc., as well as foliar and soil-borne diseases such as powdery mildew, root rot, pyethon, scab, blight, and other pathogens. It can also reduce or stop flowering. Nitrate is the form of nitrogen most easily used by plants. Nitrate, Nitrate, is an anion, making it highly leachable. It is readily absorbed by the plant and does not need to undergo any further conversion in the soil, as is the case with urea and ammonium. N helps with the uptake of cations such as K and Ca and Mg, which is K is your potassium, Ca is calcium, and Mg is magnesium. So your nitrogen helps with the uptake of potassium, calcium, and magnesium. What are 3 things that a pumpkin needs to grow late season? Potassium, calcium, magnesium, right? That's exactly what I've been telling you guys for a while now. That's why last year I kept pumping the nitrogen to them, right? I kept giving them nitrogen because it helps the cation exchange for your potassium, calcium, and magnesium. Woo-wee, sorry. Let's see, the conversion of nitrates into amino acids occurs in the leaf. The process is fueled by solar energy, which makes it energy efficient process. Ammonium taken in by the plants is used directly in proteins. This form is not lost easily from the soil. Ammonium has to be converted into organic N compounds in the roots. This process is fueled by carbohydrates, which are at the expense of other plant life processes such as plant growth and fruit field. Urea lowers pH, is fast acting but can easily burn plants. so it is used in smaller amounts in general. Urea will provide the most nitrogen at the lowest cost. Urea may be mixed with other fertilizers or may be applied on its own for plants that love acidic soils. Urea is one of the top fertilizers for acidifying soils. When urea is placed on the surface of the soil, a chemical reaction takes place that changes urea to ammonium bicarbonate. The ammonium will convert into a gas, which is then lost if not protected. This means urea should be mixed in with the soil for maximum effectiveness. Disadvantages of urea as a result of chemical reaction that takes place when urea is applied. The soil special care must be taken to ensure that the nitrogen is not lost when the ammonia evaporates. This can make urea impractical for gardeners dealing with large plots of land. The high solubility of urea also makes dry storage conditions imperative. Now we get into phosphorus. Go ahead and do this one real quick. Phosphorus enables photosynthesis, energy transformation, builds nucleic acids, proteins, and enzymes, facilitates root growth, strengthens stems and stalks, improves flower formation and seed production, promotes crop uniformity, and can contribute to early maturity. So you want to be careful with the phosphorus, the amount of phosphorus you're getting. We don't, as pumpkin growers, we don't want early maturity. If we're growing giants, we want it to go on that vine for as long as possible. So we need just enough to get us big roots and good healthy stems and stuff, but we want just under it for early maturity. Let's see here. Phosphorus increases disease resistance, improves overall crop quality, and facilitates nitrogen fixation abilities of legumes. Differences in the initial chemical reaction between various commercial phosphorus fertilizers. In the soil become minor over time. Within weeks or months, they are minimal as far as plant nutrition is concerned. Phosphorus is an anion. It will usually combine with iron or aluminum and act as a cation. If soils are too acidic, phosphorus reacts with iron and aluminum, which makes it unavailable to plants. If soils are too alkaline, phosphorus reacts with calcium, and so it becomes inaccessible. Excess of phosphorus interferes with the uptake of other elements such as iron, manganese, and zinc, and may inhibit the formation of mycorrhiza. Organic forms of fertilizer seem to have a less inhibitory effect on mycorrhiza than other inorganic soluble fertilizers. Over-fertilization with phosphorus is common, and many growers apply unnecessarily high amounts of phosphorus fertilizers, especially when compound NPK fertilizers are used and manure. Phosphorus moves very little in most soils, possible only 1 or 2 inches from the application site. Crops seldom absorb more than 20% of phosphorus fertilizer during the first season. After applications, samples are taken from the topsoil, which will usually indicate a higher amount of phosphorus than the samples that are taken from the subsoil. The location from which soil samples are taken can affect the results considerably. Your soil samples must be from the plant's growing zone without movement. Little soil phosphorus is lost by leaching. This fixed residual phosphorus remains in the root zone and will be slowly available to succeeding crops. Soil erosion can carry phosphorus into waterways. You can easily get levels of phosphorus too high, and it can take many years to bring it back down. Phosphorus is returned to the soil by decaying plant matter and manure. If you plant a cover crop and remove all the material from the area, it will help bring down the phosphorus because it's trapped in that crop. Animals and humans do not digest phosphorus very well, and it can return to the soil by their manure and urine. Possible 60% of consumed phosphorus is exerted in urine. Recommendations for applying manure is usually based on the level of phosphorus that you can currently have, not the amount of nitrogen or potassium, so as not to bring the levels of phosphorus too high. Phosphorus fertilizers are manufactured from rock phosphate. Rock phosphate is rarely used as a fertilizer because it is low availability to plants. Transport cost is high. Plants can only take up phosphorus dissolved in the soil solution. And since most of the soil phosphorus exists in stable chemical compounds, only a small amount of phosphorus is available to the plant at any given time. And you got superphosphates, concentrated superphosphates, boy, that's a bad word. MAP. I just call it MAP. Diammonium phosphate, which I got some over here. So superphosphate is, the ground rock that we were just talking about, and it's treated with sulfuric acid to yield superphosphate. About 85 to 90% of this phosphate in superphosphate is water soluble. Concentrated superphosphate is the reaction of phosphoric acid and with finely ground rock phosphate yields superphosphate. Monoammonium phosphate, MAP. It can be placed in close proximity to germinating seeds without concern for NH3 damage. However, MAP used in foliar spray or added to irrigation water shouldn't be mixed with calcium or magnesium fertilizers. Diammonium phosphate is manufactured by reacting phosphoric acid and ammonium and contains 2 ammonium molecules in alkaline soil conditions. One of the ammonium molecules in DAP will revert to ammonia, while making it an excellent fit for low pH or alkaline soils. DAP itself is alkaline with a pH of 7, itself is a alkaline with a high pH exceeding 7. Potassium potash refers to potassium compounds and potassium materials. The name derives from potash. The first way of manufacturing potassium carbonate was extracted by leaching the ashes or burnt plants in big iron pots to dissolve out the soluble components. Evaporation of the solution produced potash. On July 31st, 1970, President George Washington signed the first patent ever issued in the United States. It was granted to Samuel Hopkins for a process and apparatus for making potash, America's first industrial chemical. Potassium is needed for nutrient uptake, and it improves the movement of other nutrients throughout the plant, develops better root systems, helping in providing consistent growth for fruits, improved color resistance to drought, and provides insect and disease protection. Approximately 60 enzymes perform complex chemical reactions in the plants. All of them need potassium to perform their tasks. Some of these enzymes are needed for the production of proteins, starches, and play a role in photosynthesis. Potassium regulates the opening and closing of the stomata, and therefore regulates the CO2 uptake. So it regulates the breathing of underneath the leaves, right? The stomata underneath here. For transpiring, right? We need to go over that. I need to tell y'all about transpiring and the fact that these plants, they got 2 cardiovascular systems within them. And I've been studying a lot on this week. Y'all would be very interested to learn that. So we'll go over that soon, about the cardiovascular system inside the plants and how they got 2 systems, basically 2 heartbeats, right? But anyway, we'll go over that in a little while. Not tonight, though. Let's see here. Okay, the uptake of potassium can be reduced by too much magnesium and or calcium, mainly in high pH soils with low pH, higher than normal levels of other cations, including hydrogen, aluminum, and iron. Among others, can compete with potassium for entry into the plant and or create soil conditions that lower the ability to, lower the ability of potassium to be absorbed. Potassium sulfate is 0050. It's 18% sulfur. This type of sulfur doesn't change the pH. Also known as sulfate of potash, SOP, SOP, or SOP. Let me see, is considered premium quality potash. It contains two key nutrients for growing crops, potassium and sulfur. It is a white, 100% soluble solid and can be used in irrigation lines or incorporated into soil granularly. Potassium sulfate can be used in irrigation water and must be applied directly to soil. Excuse me. Granular potassium sulfate cannot be used in irrigation watering and must be applied directly to soil. Mono potassium sulfate, all right, which that's what I have in here, MPK. It's a 5234. Mono potassium sulfate fertilizer contains 52% phosphorus and 34% potassium and can be 100% water soluble. It can be used in irrigation lines and directly applied to the soil. Potassium chloride 0060. I used that in 2020. Also known as MOP, murate of potash. Not recommended for giant pumpkins. Can cause splitting and may cause the fruit to mature early. And contains larger amounts of chloride, but it has been used. Like I said, I used it in 2020. Potassium nitrate also is known as nitrate of potash or saltpeter, which is 13.7 and 46 and 0. Crystalline in form of white in form and white in color. Colorless, odorless, water soluble, and chloride free. It provides essential nitrogen in the most efficient. It provides essential nitrogen in the most efficient nitrate form. Ideal for plants that are sensitive to chloride and high salinity. And then you got magnesium, and then calcium, and sulfur, and micronutrients all the way down through here. And chelated zinc, EDTA, chelated manganese, EDTA. All these, right, is what we have, what Prevogenics sells. Okay, iron, that's DTBA, copper, chelated copper, or chelated copper, excuse me, that's EDTA. You know, all this stuff that we have from them and Prevogenics sells all EDTA free. Right, so anyhow, guys, that's it for tonight. We appreciate you watching. I hope you guys have learned something. And guys, we'll see you tomorrow right here in the hollers and hills of West Virginia. Boom!
Don't forget to smash that like button. Hit that notification bell. Don't forget to share.
Thank you, good sir.
You're welcome. And subscribe.